The glass doors of Harrison and Vale Enterprises slid open with a soft hum as Elena Malik walked in, her coffee in one hand and her ID badge swinging from her neck. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, not in pride, but in quiet determination. She wasn't just walking into an office. She was walking into a life that everyone, especially her mother, believed wasn't real. Her desk sat right at the entrance, the first smile every visitor saw and the last goodbye they received. She loved that small corner more than anyone could understand. The smooth surface, the smell of fresh printouts, the subtle buzz of phone lines, it all made her feel part of something important. But to her mother, it was just pretend. Receptionist, that's not a real career, Elena. Stop playing office. Her mother would often say, waving a hand dismissively as if Elena's job were a child's game. Elena never argued back. She would only smile softly, tuck her hair behind her ear, and return to her desk the next day. Always on time, always polished, always ready. That morning, she arrived early again. The air was crisp, and the building still half asleep. She turned on the lights, arranged the files that were left in disarray, and made sure the company's logo on the wall gleamed. To others, these were small, meaningless tasks. To Elena, they were acts of care. By 9 a.m., the office came alive, clicking heels, murmuring voices, and the faint sound of printers starting up. Elena greeted everyone with her usual calm warmth, though most barely noticed her beyond a polite nod. Still, she didn't mind. She had her own small victories, like remembering every client's name or calming angry callers before they reached the executives. At lunch, while others laughed in the cafeteria, Elena stayed at her desk, typing out schedules and organizing documents the senior secretary had forgotten. She didn't want recognition. She just wanted to matter, even if it was silently. Yet deep inside, a small ache lived in her chest. Every night when she returned home, her mother would ask, so, "Did you get promoted to Queen of the Phones today?" It was meant as a joke, but each word pierced her a little deeper. That night, Elena lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan. The hum reminded her of the office, of the rhythm she had come to love. "Maybe," she whispered into the darkness, "maybe one day they'll see what I can do." She didn't know that day was much closer than she imagined. Because destiny, just like respect, often arrives when you least expect it, in the middle of chaos, under the hum of office lights, when you choose to stay behind while everyone else walks away. And soon, Elena's quiet corner desk would become the center of an emergency that would change everything. Her career, her confidence, and the way her mother looked at her forever. It was nearly 7:30 p.m. The sky outside had turned a deep violet, and the building that usually buzzed with noise now hummed in silence. The janitor was mopping the far corner. The lights dimmed to save power, and Elena, as always, was still at her desk. She wasn't required to stay, but she liked leaving things perfect for the next morning. Files in order, the call log updated, and the welcome area spotless. She called it closing the day with grace. That's when the phone rang, a sharp, urgent tone that didn't belong to this quiet hour. She glanced at the screen. CO line direct. Her heart skipped. Mr. Harrison himself. That line was rarely used, and only the senior executives usually picked it up. Still, instinct took over. She answered, "Harrison and Vale Enterprises. This is Elena speaking." The voice on the other end was rushed, tense. "Whoever this is, listen carefully. The CEO needs every department head on a conference call in 10 minutes. The Singapore deal is crashing, client lost connection, files not syncing. We could lose $40 million if this isn't fixed tonight." Before she could respond, the call ended. Elena froze for a second, the weight of those words sinking in. The CEO needed action, and there was no one here to help. The secretaries had left. The IT manager was gone. Even the night guard was half asleep downstairs. She looked at the glowing phone, then at the clock, 7:32. Okay, she whispered. If no one else is here, I'll do it. Her fingers flew over the keyboard. She accessed the company contact sheet, began dialing numbers, sending urgent messages, and coordinating emails. Her calm voice filled the office as she handled panicking executives from different departments. Mr. Larson, please check the shared drive permissions. Ma'am, I've already alerted IT. You'll have a secure link in 5 minutes. Yes, sir, I'll connect you directly to the CEO line as soon as he's ready. She was no longer a receptionist. She was the heartbeat of the entire operation. By the time the first department head rushed in, sweat on his forehead, Elena had already stabilized the situation. She'd even contacted the Singapore branch manager directly and guided them through restoring the lost data. Just as she was finishing, the glass doors opened, and Mr. Harrison, the CEO himself, strode in. He stopped, watching her. The phones were ringing, screens flashing, and there she was, a calm, composed voice, steady, commanding order in chaos. Who authorized you to handle this? He asked, his voice firm but curious. Elena stood, heart pounding. No one, sir. I just didn't want the company to lose the deal. There was silence. Then he smiled, a rare, almost disbelieving smile. Well, Miss Malik, he said, adjusting his tie, you might have just saved us $40 million. He looked around, then turned back to her. I want you to be in my office first thing tomorrow morning. When he left, Elena stood there, trembling, not from fear, but from the shock of finally being seen. The lights flickered once as the building's night mode kicked in. She sat back at her desk, exhaled deeply, and whispered to herself, maybe this is it. Maybe they'll finally know my name. Outside, rain began to fall softly against the windows, as if the sky itself was washing away every moment she had ever felt small. Tomorrow would bring a storm of its own, one that would shake her world in ways she never expected. The next morning, sunlight poured into the glass lobby, bouncing off the marble floors and brightening every corner of Harrison and Vale Enterprises. But for Elena, the world already felt brighter because today she was going to meet the CEO. She arrived early, nerves twisting in her stomach like vines. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged the fresh lilies on the counter and smoothed her uniform. Every glance toward the elevator made her heartbeat quicken. At 8:57 a.m. sharp, she got the call from the CEO assistant. Mr. Harrison would like to see you in his office now. She stood, straightened her blazer, and whispered, This is it, Elena. Don't stumble. But before she could move, she heard a familiar voice echo across the lobby. Elena, it was her mother, standing there in a worn shawl and a sharp, disapproving look. Her mother's eyes darted across the lobby, the marble floors, the glass walls, the busy professionals walking past. For a moment, she looked impressed. Then, as her gaze landed on Elena behind the reception desk, that expression turned into something sharper, disappointment. So this is it. This is your big office job, she said, walking closer. Sitting behind a counter and answering phones. You look like a school receptionist, not a professional. Elena's throat tightened. Mom, please, no, Elena. You could have done something real. A teacher, a banker, even a nurse. But this, she gestured toward the desk. This is just playing office. The words struck like stones, each syllable cutting into the fragile pride that had bloomed overnight. Her coworkers nearby fell silent. Even the security guard looked away, uncomfortable. Elena's face burned with embarrassment, but before she could respond, a deep, commanding voice filled the air. Mrs. Malik. They turned. Mr. Harrison, the CEO himself, was standing at the elevator doors. He looked perfectly composed, but his eyes held something like disbelief and a touch of sternness. Actually, he continued, walking closer, your daughter isn't just playing office. Last night, while everyone else was gone, she managed a crisis that could have cost this company $40 million. Her mother froze. She coordinated departments, handled client communication, and took charge under pressure, something even my senior managers failed to do. Then he turned to Elena, his expression softening slightly. Miss Malik, I was serious about yesterday. I'd like you to join me upstairs. I have a new role for you, executive assistant to the CEO. The entire lobby seemed to still. Elena's mother's lips parted, but no words came out. Elena stood there for a moment, the weight of her mother's scorn still heavy on her chest, yet somehow her heart lifted higher than it ever had. She looked at her mother, not in anger, not in pride, but in calm understanding. "Excuse me, Mom," she said quietly. "I have to go to my new office." As she walked toward the elevator, every step echoed with silent power, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything anymore. When the elevator doors closed behind her, she took one deep breath. The reflection in the glass doors showed a different woman, one who had survived humiliation, disbelief, and smallness, and turned it into grace. Upstairs, the CEO office awaited her, and with it, the beginning of a new life. But deep down, Elena knew her true victory wasn't the promotion. It was learning that sometimes the sweetest revenge is to rise quietly, beautifully, while they're still doubting you. The elevator doors opened to the top floor, a place Elena had only seen from afar. The carpet here was thicker, the silence heavier, and the air smelled faintly of success and polished wood. Mr. Harrison's office overlooked the entire city, a panorama of glass towers and golden sunlight. He motioned for her to sit, and for the first time Elena sat across from power, not beneath it. "You remind me of how I started," Mr. Harrison said, leaning back in his chair. "People think the front desk is a small job, but I've always believed that how someone handles small things shows how they'll handle big ones." Elena listened, barely able to believe any of this was real. The same hands that once organized files and answered phones were now signing her new employment contract, executive assistant to the CEO. When she left that office, everything looked different. The same marble floors that once felt cold now shimmered under her steps. The same walls that once boxed her in now reflected her rise. That evening, when she reached home, her mother sat quietly on the couch. The television flickered softly in the background, but the usual disapproving tone was gone. "They made you assistant to the CEO," her mother asked carefully. Elena smiled, sitting beside her. "Yes, he said I saved the company from a major loss." There was silence, long and unfamiliar. Her mother's eyes, usually sharp with judgment, softened for the first time. "I didn't know you had that in you," she whispered. Elena's smile didn't fade. "That's because you never looked close enough, Mom." The words weren't bitter, just honest. Weeks turned into months. Elena's new role pushed her beyond what she thought she could handle. She learned negotiation, management, and confidence, lessons life had tried to teach her long before her title did. She traveled with Mr. Harrison to conferences, sat in meetings where million-dollar deals were discussed, and watched how leaders made decisions. And slowly she became one. One evening, as she stood by her office window, city lights sparkling below, her mother called. "The neighbors came by today," she said proudly. "I told them my daughter works directly with the CEO. They were very impressed." Elena laughed softly. There was no resentment left, only peace. "That's good, Mom," she replied. "I'm happy you're proud." When she hung up, she stared out at the skyline, the same one she used to look up at through the building's glass doors, wondering if she'd ever belong beyond them. Now, she was part of that world, but the sweetest part wasn't the title, or the salary, or the recognition. It was knowing that she'd never again need to explain her worth to anyone, not even to the people she loved most. She whispered to herself, with a smile that carried years of quiet struggle and victory, "I don't need them to understand me. I just need to keep becoming who I'm meant to be." As the night deepened and the city pulsed with life, Elena switched off her office light. Her reflection lingered in the glass for a moment, confident, calm, and whole. The same girl who once sat behind a desk answering calls had answered a far greater one, her own. And this time, she wasn't playing office. She was running it.